We are doing this. So excited to be here today. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Awesome, awesome. Well, listen, it's just a fireside chat, you and me, with a few of our closest 100 friends and maybe a few more 100 coming on. And it's been a while since we've been in person. I just saw you, a couple weeks ago in Toronto. You were promoting your best-selling book. I'm so excited to talk about that today.
Yeah,
So,
it was good to see you again. It's, with this whole crazy pandemic that we went through, it had been a few years. So it was nice to see you again face to face.
that's awesome. Well, I'm super grateful that you're here. And for those of you who don't know who Brian Proctor is, I'm super excited to have you here. You spent the last 30 years wandering the globe, immersed in personal development. I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to have a father like yours, Bob Proctor. And I'm so excited for you to come on to share a little bit about your journey. And I have a ton of questions that have been pre-sent to me from other people. So thank you again for your time. And so for those of you who don't know who Brian is, I'm just going to give just a little bit of a brief description around Brian, what he's done, not in its entirety, but just a small outline of Brian. I mean, Brian, you were born in the early 60s. You actually grew up in Toronto,
Mhm.
which is awesome. And you were born in the same year that your father, Bob, was given the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And that was a turning point, not only in his life, but really ultimately shaped your life, right? And
Yeah, I mean, if I'm to think about this, first off, I just want to welcome everybody that's here. I know most of you are probably in the GTA area. Yes, I'm originally from Toronto. I don't live there now, but I'm back in Toronto all the time. My kids live there. Um, you know, Dad was my father, Bob Proctor. He was given that book, Think and Grow Rich, in October of 1961. And I was born in December of 1961. So I got to be there for the entire ride. And I really got to witness, really what he did. My father was, for those of you that don't know, he was really one of the founders of the whole personal development movement. Um, he was teaching this material when not many people even knew what it was. When it was hard to get the material out, there was no internet, there was no way of communicating with people. You had to go out and knock on doors. And so, I really got to witness him in the early days and the work and the commitment that it required to get this material out because he truly knew that what he was studying and what he was learning could help all of us live a better life. And he was committed to teaching that. And so, yeah, I got to witness the entire journey, which was a lot of fun.
yeah, I'm sorry. Just want to make sure someone says I have no sound. I think, Brian, you can hear me okay, and I can hear you. So just want to
I can
double
hear
check
you great.
before we get started. Dave, okay, thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. Appreciate all of you. I remember being in some of, but before we get into your father, I mean, you've done some amazing things. I mean, you literally helped launch your dad's career into the internet space. I mean, you founded really niche marketing in terms of email marketing for the company. This is right in the early days of the internet. Basically, you had an idea that you were going to build an email list, which was not common back then. And that email list was going to create value for all of our entrepreneurs who are on this webinar right now, right? You're always creating value. And it was a platform for your dad to share teachings. I mean, you've been a top affiliate in the online marketing world. You've been part of some of the largest product launches in the internet with joint ventures bringing in millions of dollars in commissions and giving many entrepreneurs their first opportunities with large audiences. Today, you're self-employed and really, I'm excited to share with everyone very shortly the your new book, right?
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
bestseller right now, and it's titled "My Father Knew the Secret: Growing Up with Bob Proctor." So you've had a crazy career.
Yeah, yeah, it has been a crazy career. I worked with my father, gosh, back in the early 80s when I was a teenager, and my early 20s. And then I had to leave. I had to go out and do my own thing and really, you know, make my own mark in the world. And I'm sure some of you know, I was in real estate. I was in real estate in Toronto. I was a real estate agent for quite a few years. And through the 80s and into the 90s. Um, and it was a lot of fun. I took the material that I learned from my father and I applied it in real estate. And my first year in the business, I actually made it into the top 100 of a very large real estate company internationally. So it was interesting to take this material. My dad kept trying to get me back into his business, and eventually I did. I wanted to travel and move around a little bit more, and so that afforded me to be able to do that. And like you said, I started emailing back when it was not a thing. I created a quote of the day service. I always knew that in real estate, what made me successful and what really helped me was that I stayed in touch with my past clients. And that was something that with the internet starting to do its thing, I thought, boy, this is an easy way to stay in touch with people. And Rich, when I started email list building, it was not a thing on the web. Quote of the day services were not a thing on the web. But I knew that if I could figure this out and find a way to deliver valuable content to people, they would stay connected to us. And so that's what I did. And boy, it worked out very, very well.
Sure
You
did.
know, it enabled us that when people really started searching out for my father, we were ready to capture their information and stay in contact with them. And that was a big deal. And it worked very, very well. So, anybody on here, I'm sure a lot of you do email, you stay in touch with clients, but if you don't, um, I really challenge you to look into doing that because there is nothing better than staying in touch with your network of clients and people, friends, everything else, and deliver content that has value. Don't just try to sell them something all the time. Deliver content that has value. You do that, you're off to the races.
You mentioned earlier in our conversation that it has been a crazy 5 years or 4 years in the world. And I think there's a lot of people on this webinar and who are going to listen to this because we are recording this and we will share this out to the marketplace. There's a lot of people who are in a situation where they're trying to figure out what's next in their life. They're trying to figure out, how to restart their life, restart their business, maybe restarting their health. And what I find interesting is that you had used this material that your dad was teaching around the world to propel you into the top 100 in a global company out of Toronto. And would you say the principles and the ideas of personal development and leadership that you learned then are still relevant today?
Oh, absolutely. They're probably more relevant today than ever. There's so much noise out there today. There's a lot of stuff going on. So it's probably more important now than it has ever been. There's so much negative stuff out there, and there's a lot of negative news and everything else that can really drag us down. Even the real estate industry right now is going through its challenges. And if we're not strong enough mentally and if we're not focused on the good and what we're trying to do, we can get dragged down by that. So now is probably more important than ever to really study personal development material, really get in harmony with what are you capable of? What are you capable of achieving? What can you do? What can you do to be better today than you were yesterday? And, really get zeroed in on that because now's the time more than ever, for sure.
If I look at some of the questions that were sent over to me, I think one of the most important questions that it was sent to me 15 times. Just this one question alone. What did Bob teach you? What did your dad teach? So I keep saying Bob is your dad. I know him as Bob, right? And so, what was his strategy for really narrowing in and setting a goal? And then what was his daily method of operation to work towards attaining that goal?
Well, goal setting and everything around that was really one of the big things that he taught. And I'll be the first to say, even when I was younger, I used to love going to his goal achieving seminars, because every time I went, I came out of it and I was just so much more productive. He always felt that we needed to have a goal that was so inspiring, that was so out there that it would cause us to do things in a day we would not normally do. That's the key. And he said, the key with picking a goal is to pick something that inspires you, that causes you to wake up in the morning and bounce out of bed ready to do something, not something that you necessarily know how to achieve. If you know how to achieve it, or if you know that if you just do this, that, and this other thing, you'll get there, there's not a lot of inspiration in that. He was always big on picking a goal that was so big that you didn't know how you were going to get there, but you'd step in and start taking action and find your way along the way. And he said the great thing about going after something inspiring is that, certainly when you achieve that goal, that's a bonus. That's kind of the prize that you're going after. But the growth that you experience along the way, that's everything. And that's really what he taught. And he said, that the key to picking a goal is to take some quiet time and, go into a room, close the doors, be quiet, really get in touch with what do you want? What do you want to have? What do you want to do? What do you want to be? And and an analogy I like to use is if you had a magic wand and you could have anything, what would that be? And start writing that down. Start writing out these ideas. And some of these ideas are going to seem way off the wall wacky. It's like, who am I to think that I could do this? But it doesn't matter. Start writing them down. And as you write them down, you'll start to see a few themes or something that's going to stand out a little bit better than some of the others. And you'll find something that will inspire you. And when you do, grab onto that and start going for it. One thing that my father did that he taught me was never to plan the whole thing out to how you're going to get there. Because people that just constantly plan, they never actually take action. They're just planning. They're if I do this and I do that, and they set all this up, and they never actually step out and take action because they think they're keeping busy by planning. Certainly you need a bit of a plan, but the most important piece is to step out and start taking action, even if it's imperfect action. When we step out and start to do something, it allows us to see a bigger picture. And the more we start to do, the bigger, the bigger the picture that we see. And that's the key. You learn along the way, and you will learn by taking action. I just think of so many things. I've got a big goal right now around this book. I just the response that I've gotten from it, Rich, has been incredible.
Well, I just
And
finished it actually a couple
did
weeks
you?
ago. Yeah, and I was going through it again this morning. And
Yeah.
would you be open to sharing your big audacious goal, or is that a bit too personal with the book?
Yeah, I can share the goal. Sure. Yeah.
By the way, you can all tell that this is not pre-scripted in any way. But the reason why I'm asking this question, Brian, is that I think some people set this massive goal in their life and they get scared and they don't do anything because it's just so big.
Right.
Right? I think this is some of the people I work with. They get so scared of this big goal, and they're like, "There's no way I can do this, so I'm just not going to do anything."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe if you can share some of your big audacious dreams and goals around this book, maybe we
Sure.
can help you because you're helping us.
Well, I'll tell you. So I'll show you. Here's the book. My
Yep.
father knew the secret. Growing up with Bob Proctor, and I wrote this book really as kind of an ode to my father. I've put everything in the book that Bob Proctor taught me as his son, of how to live a better life. So that what's in here is good. And I often say this book isn't about me. It's really about who my father was. And it's about all the lessons, I share stories and lessons of everything that he taught me over my lifetime. And then I have consider points at the end of each chapter as to how you can take that lesson or that story and apply it to your own life to become more successful. Well, I started writing this book when my father was alive. And quite frankly, I thought he was going to be here when it came out, and that didn't happen. Um, as you know, Rich, there's not a lot of money in a book. So my goal around this book is not financial gain. It's really about getting the information out there. And my goal, quite frankly, is to have 100,000 copies of the book sold. And in my head anyway, I figure if I hit that 100,000 mark, it'll take a life of its own on, and it will just then keep on going. Because I know that the message in this book can change lives. I really do. It's I don't know what it is in Canada. In the US, it's like $19 on Amazon. It's not expensive, and it has everything that my father has taught me over my lifetime. So I know that in this one little book, it can change your life if you really read it and take action on some of the things. So in having that goal, I'll be the first to say I don't have a clue how I'm going to get there. I released the book about 4 or 5 months ago, and it's been doing very, very well. It's already been a bestseller. It reached number one a couple of times. It's doing great, but I'll be the first to say I'm nowhere near that 100,000 sales yet, and I don't know how I'm going to get there. But here's the deal: it motivates me.
Right.
I'm inspired by that goal, and I know in my heart I will get there. I do not know what is required to get there, but I'm stepping into it every day and I'm doing whatever I can every day to help the sales and help it get out there. That's it. And I'm doing some things that, quite frankly, are uncomfortable, that I'm not comfortable with, but I'm willing to take action to get there. And that's the key with a great goal. And that's what my father always taught. A good goal is going to cause you to do things in a day you would never normally do. That's really it, Rich.
That's, it's an amazing advice. I've heard this from your father a bajillion times. And there you go. Someone just purchased your book on Amazon for $28. And he always said, and I just remember distinctly being in rooms with him, don't worry about the how. And there's some people here listening to this webinar today who are in this negative feedback loop. I
Mhm.
experience it as I'm going towards my goal. How am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? It's not going to work. I'm crazy. This is not going to work. You know what? It's going to fail miserably. Why even bother? Maybe I'm going to drop my goal down to a lower level. How do you stop that demon from helping you, from forcing you to walk away from that big dream? And
So you stop that demon. The easiest way I can describe it is with awareness, by realizing what that is, what's happening, don't settle, never settle. Dad always taught me never to settle, always chase your dreams. And he said it's usually when we're being challenged the most that we have to be the strongest. And when we can get through that, my God, the world opens up. And it's through challenging times that we learn the most. And that is the time that you have to be committed. I just see Paulette said, don't settle. Man, that is it. Do not settle. Don't allow any adverse conditions to affect the way you are. You know, I'll share a story that's not to do with sales or anything of that nature, but it's around how to be when adverse conditions are around you. Um, my father, at the end of his life, I was in Toronto for, gosh, probably the last 6 months of his life. I was there doing whatever I could to help him make things easier. And at the very end, he was in the ICU. And I can remember sitting in there with him for hours, just holding hands. The nurses never kicked us out because they knew that he was going. You're not supposed to stay in the ICU for very long, but we seemed to get around that okay. And here is the cool thing that my father did that really, really drove home this lesson. He always said to never let outside circumstances dictate how you're going to act or how you're going to behave. And here he was at the end of his life. He was in a lot of pain, very uncomfortable, laying in the bed, and this nurse came in the room and she had to put in another IV. He already had a few IVs in him, and he wasn't real big on that stuff. And this nurse is poking and poking and poking, and she could not find a vein. And she was getting, all kind of nervous, and she just kept apologizing. And I can remember sitting in that hospital, hearing other patients yelling at doctors and nurses because they were grumpy, they were in pain. Dad never did that. This is what he did in that situation. He put his hand on that nurse's hand and he looked her in the eyes And he said, dear, you're doing a great job. Don't worry about it. You just do whatever you need to do. And then at that instant, he put her at ease and she was able to find the vein and things were done. But here's the lesson in it. He never let his outside circumstance dictate how he was going to act or how he was going to treat those around him. So if you're going through challenging times, don't let the challenging times dictate how you're going to act or how you're going to treat those around you. Stay focused on what you're going after and know in your heart that you will get there. It's when we can eliminate the chatter and the nonsense around us. That's when we get clarity and just keep on working. And I challenge anybody that if you're struggling, here's something I've always done. Whenever I've gotten into a little bit of a slump or I've got blocks going on, Dad always taught me, he said, you know, what you need to do is take a piece of paper and write out 5 things that you can do today that are goal achieving activities that are going to help you get to your goal. Write 5 things down and then start at number 1 and don't finish until you've accomplished number 1. Then go to number 2. You do that, you'll get out of a slump in no time at all. What can you do today to make a deal happen today? What can you do today to get one step closer to whatever your dream is, whatever your goal is? That's the way Dad lived his life, and he lived it right until the end that way.
It's a beautiful story, Brian. I hope I'm that strong at the end.
Yeah, me
Myself,
too.
right? Right.
Me too.
When you one of the questions I'm reading here is, what did your dad teach you around avoiding distraction in your life to stay on course in pursuit of that vision that you're moving towards?
Well, distractions will always happen. Things can always get thrown in our way in front of us as we're going towards something. But the one thing I've always learned is that if your goal is big enough, those distractions aren't going to affect you. So if you're being distracted, if you're being thrown off course, maybe take another look at your goal. Is it inspiring enough? Is it driving you enough? Is it causing you to step out of whatever you're in to do something different, to do something aggressive, something out of the norm, something you would never normally do? That would be my question to you. Make sure that whatever you're chasing is inspiring enough that causes you to do things that get you out of your comfort zone.
That's right.
Uh,
How do
and
you
when you're focused on something good, the distractions will not be as big. They won't be as strong because you're so focused. My wife and I often will talk about what we're chasing and what we're doing, and sometimes outside circumstances are not showing themselves. It's like, man, this is not happening. What can we do? And I always look at Corey and I say, you know what? I know in my heart we're going to get there. And today, this is what I'm going to do. And I write down 5 things and I just get out and I start doing it. And by being in the present moment and doing what you can right now, that'll get you out of anything. It really will.
sometimes you have this feeling of, I want to do this, but maybe I'm not good enough.
Sure.
How do
Yeah.
how do you change the I'm not good enough story? Right.
You
Because
know,
your dad used to talk about belief systems and
yeah.
self-image, and we can go really deep into this conversation, I'm sure. But how do you handle that demon? I'm not good enough.
I almost look at that like the imposter syndrome. I think a lot of us face it. I'll be the first. I faced it. Um, I, I think it comes back down to when we start thinking we're not good enough, that means we're not being the best version of us right now. And we're letting a negative self-image or a negative image of us uh, change the way we are in this world. You know, the big deal is to dream of what you want to be. And if you don't feel you're good enough, don't worry about it. Just keep doing it. Keep forging your way. And before long, you'll start to believe you are good enough. One of the things Dad always taught me was to write out an affirmation every day, something in the positive tense, something that you want to, how you want to be, and to write that out every day. And in the beginning, you might not believe it. You think, I'm not that person. But if you write it every single day and you focus on it every day, eventually you'll start to believe it. You know, when I got into real estate, this is probably the easiest way I can explain it. I was 26 years old and I had a lot of friends saying, "Who's going to take you seriously, Brian? 26 years old and you're trying to sell houses." And I never let that outside chatter affect me. And this is what I did. And dad basically told me to do this. He said, "What you need to do, Brian, is treat everybody as if you are the best real estate agent in the entire city of Toronto." And that's it. And that's what I did. I treated everybody like I was the best agent. I was going to give them the best service I could. And my very first clients would have never known that they were my very first clients. I acted as if I was the person I wanted to be. So act as if you are the person you want to be. And when you keep acting like that and you keep being that person, eventually you will become it. It's as simple as that. Now, the hardest part of that is that you'll have people closest to you looking at you thinking, "Who do you think you are?" Right? That
Yep,
happens.
been there.
Um, but if you keep acting as if you are the person you want to become, you will eventually become that person. And eventually, other people will start to see you as that person. That's how you get through that imposter syndrome
It's great advice. So you are who you practice to be every single day.
every day. You know, something I wrote in the beginning of the book and I wrote at the end of the book is this: what would happen in your life if you were the best version of you every single day? If you just gave focus to being the best version of you every day, my God, our life will change. I can tell you in a day or two, there'll be small changes. You might not even notice it. But if you keep staying and you keep with your consciousness, be the best version of you every single day in how you treat people and how you act, in the actions that you take, a week from now, a month from now, 6 months from now, you'll look back and you'll think, "Wow, what happened?" You'll be a completely different person. Most of the time, we just go from day to day to day in our daily routines and just let whatever's going on go on. But boy, if we consciously decide to be the best version of us, how can I be the best? For me, how can I be the best husband? How can I be the best father? How can I be the best business person? Whatever that may be, what can you do to be the best version of yourself every single day? Man, your life will change. It'll change.
It's great advice, right? Sometimes it's hard to act in the best way because sometimes this little chatter in our brain goes, you know what, it's not going to work anyway, so why bother? Why don't I just go back to doing what I normally do, right? It's that chatter I find, even as I pursue my goals and my dreams and whatever I'm pursuing, it's like the old Rich, it gets pulled back and says wants to be a certain way. And a very close friend of mine said, Rich, you got to pick a Rich. Pick the Rich you want to be. Pick the Rich that you want to be every day, and then go be that person. And
Yeah,
that the results that person would have would eventually show up.
right.
So
I like that.
um, this question kind of expands upon some of the things you were just sharing. Um, and I'm just going to read it because it's a little bit easier, okay, Brian? And I'll repeat it a
Sure.
couple times.
Yeah.
And I know the person who sent this, and he happens to be in real estate. And he said, when you have a big goal that you are aligning with, so going after a really big goal, but you have no reference point to what that goal feels like,
Mhm.
what is the best way to approach feeling that big goal so you know it's attainable? So,
Mhm.
example, say you make 300K a year in real estate, which is like 20 grand net. I'm kidding. And you want to make $1 million. You know what it feels like to make 300K,
Mhm.
right? But you don't know what it feels like to make a million,
Mhm.
right? How do you bridge that gap or fill the void? Like, how do you figure out what that would feel like?
Okay, I can answer that actually really easily. It's use your imagination. The imagination is one of our mental faculties, and that's something that Dad had always taught in the seminars. He always said to achieve big goals, sometimes we need to live from the place we want to be. So what you need to do is call it meditation, call it whatever you want. Lay in your bed, sit in a comfortable chair, close your eyes, and just imagine what that would feel like. and do that every single day. Just imagine what it would feel like. I promise you that when you get there, you'll have already have felt it, and it'll be like, wow, that was easier than I thought. Um, it's in our imagination that we build these images and where we want to be, and feel it. When you feel it, it will cause you to do things. It'll get you in resonance with whatever it is you're going after. That's the key. It's imagination is everything. I'll use a super simple exercise. One thing I did when I was a kid, and this is kind of a stupid example, but I think it shows the point. I had an old 1976 Honda Civic stick shift,
Yeah.
and it was a pile of junk. It was rusting. It was terrible. I was I don't know, 16, 17 years old. I wanted a Corvette. I didn't have a clue how I was going to get a Corvette. I wasn't earning a lot of money at the time. I was just working a bit of part-time and just, making minimum wage. But I had this vision of a Corvette. Well, here's what I did. Every time I'm driving around in this old beat up Honda Civic, I was picturing myself in a Corvette. I was throwing the gears around like I was in a Corvette. I lived from that place, and I put myself in it, and I felt I was in a Corvette as I was driving the Civic. Didn't matter. That's what was in my head. And sometimes you just need to keep playing with your imagination to really let it sink in. Well, it wasn't a year and a half later, I found a way to get a Corvette because I just always pictured myself in that car. And when you picture yourself in that car and you just let your imagination take you there, what it does, as long as you take action, it gets you in that frame of mind like, yes, I can have this. But then you've got to step in. Okay, what am I going to do to get there? What actions am I going to take today that will help me get there? And I mean, I can't go back exactly what I did at 16, but I'm sure that I would, if I earned an extra dollar, I'd probably put that dollar away. I just did whatever I could each day, and those days add up. And before long, I was at a place where I could get the car that I dreamed of, that I was already picturing myself in. So I lived from that place, and eventually I got there. And you can use that example in anything, really.
Yeah, you can extrapolate that out in all areas of life, right?
Yeah.
Um, Here's a question, a bit more personal. If you had this massive goal,
Mhm.
Brian, you had this massive thing that you're going after. It's bigger than you've ever done,
Mhm.
right? How do you keep yourself in that emotional place day to day and will yourself, I can maybe I just answered my own question, but the next morning go back into that visualization, mental rehearsal. Like, how do you do it every day in faith that that thing will come? Like, like
Yeah.
you've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have acted on these principles and who have produced
Mhm.
these things. But how do I get up in the morning and say, you know what, I'm going to do this and I'm going to have faith that it's going to work because some person told me that it's going to work. Like, I think this is where I think some people that I speak with get caught up.
Well, I think you know what, Rich? One of the things that's really important is what are your morning routines? What are the
Mhm.
first things you do in the day? Um, I know lots of people with big dreams, and they can get thrown off course very easily because they're not as focused on that big dream.
Right.
I'll tell you a way to stay focused on that big dream is to set up a morning routine that every morning you take out a piece of paper or a pad. I have a little journal and I write my goal out every single day. I write it out. Dad always said writing creates thinking, and it gets us in harmony with whatever it is that we're writing. And writing, it brings it into the forefront of your mind. If that's one of the first things you do in a day, you're reinforcing what you're going after, and it will get you in the zone. It will, you may still have outside circumstances that are pulling you away, that are causing doubt. But if you keep writing that out every day, it will make a difference. I promise you. And also, we hear this all the time, and not everybody actually does it. Start writing what you're grateful for. Create a gratitude journal and write every day, every morning, what are you grateful for? What is going on in your life that you're grateful for? I'll tell you what those two things do. Number one, they cause you to start to see what's good around you so that that negative crap doesn't have as much pull. And when you're zeroed in on your goal at the start of each day, and then you start writing out these 5 things you're going to do, it keeps you on track. That's what'll keep you from being thrown off. And the people that I see get thrown off, they're the ones that don't keep on that track. They stop writing every day. They stop doing that, and then they just fall into the rut. It takes persistence and it takes a commitment to whatever it is you're going after. When you're going after something big, it's never going to be easy. There's going to be hard times. There's going to be things that will throw us off. Um, but if we're committed to it, we'll get through those hard times a lot quicker than if we're not. And if we're not, those hard times can take you down. Um, but it's boy, it's with our mental faculty, that persistence, that strength, that knowing in your heart you're going to get there, just knowing you will, and you're willing to do whatever it takes every day. And when a bad day comes, and everybody's piling on you and telling you how terrible it is, that is the time more than anything that you need to start thinking, okay, what is good around all of this? What is good? My father always said whenever anything bad happened to me, he would instantly have me say, well, what's good about that, Brian? What can you learn from that? He would have me focus on what was the good out of it so that I was always on track for the good rather than let the bad affect me. That was it.
That was it. Writing, persistence, using your will every single morning, pre-paving the day, being intentional in creating your day every single morning. So that brings me back to a story he used to tell about, was it Mulberry Lane? No, I can't remember where he was. He was by himself, and he wrote on a piece of paper that he was going to start and run a business that
Oh,
operated
maybe.
around
And that was in Glenview, Illinois, on
Glenview, Illinois. That's right. And
Maplewood Lane. That's right.
Maplewood Lane. That was it. And
Yeah.
he wrote down that he was going to start and operate a company that was global,
Mhm.
and that came true.
So here's a lesson that I think everybody's going to relate to because it totally gets into what we were just talking about. So that was 1972, 1973, probably, that Dad wrote that out, that he was going to have this company that worked
Yeah.
all around the world. And here's the deal. He was, how old would he have been I don't know, 30, in mid 30s probably at that stage.
Yep. So I was born in '73. So all
No, there.
right.
There you go. So he was pretty young at the time.
Yeah.
Uh, he was so committed to that vision. He wrote that out and he was committed to that vision. I'm going to tell you something that I don't think many people realize. He worked really hard in the industry and he had a lot of obstacles. You got to imagine what it was like before the days of the internet. It was tough slugging. I can remember Dad would rent an auditorium that would hold 2,000 people, and he would deliver 20,000 flyers to businesses and people all around, thinking that it was going to be filled. He'd have 6 people show up. 6 people. Can you imagine that? He would stand on that stage and he taught to those 6 people as if the place was full. He was that committed to what he was doing, and he was willing to do whatever it took, and he never let those obstacles stop him. Here's the deal, and this is what I want everybody to really be aware of. When the movie The Secret came out, that's what propelled my father to a whole new stage. That's what got him on Larry King Live, Ellen DeGeneres, all the things that opened him up to the big audience. That's when things really happened for him. He was 72 years old. Think about it. He worked his butt off. It was not until he was 72 years old that bang, everything opened up for him. And I can tell you, he had lots of things that could have caused him to quit. He never quit. He was so committed to his goal. He would never let outside circumstances dictate how he was going to be. He just kept on going, and he knew in his heart he would get there. You want to talk about commitment? That's it. So, what are you chasing? What is your dream? What are you going after? Is it enough to cause you to go through those tough times and to know that, hey, I want this. I am going to do this. And it doesn't matter what's happening around me. That's the kind of goal you need to have. That's the kind of inspiration you need to have. I saw my father live that, and it was really something.
I think that story was really important today because I think a lot of people, including myself, I've had the opportunity to talk with him, and not a ton, but enough where you see the glam. You see him up
Mhm,
on stage, and there's
mhm.
tons of people, and you see him on TV, and you see him in The Secret, and you see these things, but you don't see the pain or the suffering to get to those points. And I think that for our audience today, those private victories that you're going through every single day, the only way you will have a public victory is to go through those private victories, right? To
Yeah,
go through the resistance, the pain of creating something extraordinary. And I think people don't know those stories. They just think it just happened magically, right?
right, right.
Right.
If you look at anybody that has really achieved anything big, I promise you, they've had adversity in their life. I heard a podcast a couple weeks ago, and this person said this one statement that really resonated with me. They said, "We are not immune to adversity. Adversity is going to happen. Bad things will happen. The key is how do we handle it and how do we get through it? Are we going to let that bad thing take us down, or are we going to say, well, there was a hurdle. Okay, let me figure a way around it." What is your attitude when something bad happens? How are you going to be, and how are you going to deal with it? It's really everything. It really is.
Go Haney. I just wanted to comment on that comment. Go Haney. He just made my day. Um, you know, one of the questions, just maybe on a little bit lighter note, one of the questions, and I'm so curious, and I want to ask this, Brian. Um, who is Bob's greatest student of all time?
Oh,
I have a couple thoughts because
uh-huh.
there's two names that I know. Phil Goldfine was probably a very prominent person in the
Hmm.
in the movie business
Hmm.
who followed Bob's and your dad's instructions to the letter.
Hmm.
Is that fair? But is there
That
anyone
is,
else that comes to your mind? And but just so everyone doesn't know, Phil, he won a Tony, he won an Oscar, he won an Emmy, and there's one more I think that he won.
yeah, he's won all kinds of awards. He's a movie producer,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
he's also done Broadway. He's
Broadway.
done television. He's done,
Yeah,
yeah,
great guy too. And
yeah.
it was just a fun question that I was like, yeah, let's get some
Gosh.
gossip here.
It's that's an interesting question. I've never been asked that question before. I don't know as I could pick one person, Rich.
Yeah, right,
Everybody has handled it differently.
right.
I've seen different people over the years that have taken the material and really done something with it.
Yeah.
I had a conversation, gosh, it was probably 6 months ago now, with a couple. They were clients that were through my dad's seminars for boy, probably the last 10 years. They were at every seminar. And this couple, they had to call me to let me know. They said, "Boy, we wish we could have called your dad and let him know." They started a company and they built this company from ground up, and they ended up selling it for mega million dollars, like a ridiculous amount of $1 million. And they just did whatever dad said. They were focused on the goal. They just did whatever was required. And they never let those outside circumstances dictate how they were going to be. That was it. It's really, we try to overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
And really it's all about our attitude and how are we being. That's everything. I can remember dad, another outside circumstance thing. I remember the last webinar he did. It was in December of 2021. My father passed away in February of 2022. His last webinar, I was obviously up in Toronto because he wasn't doing well. And at that point, he was pretty much in a wheelchair. He could walk, but it was there was a lot of pain in it. And he had to do this webinar. He was so committed to what he was teaching and knowing how it could help people that it didn't matter what he was going through. He was going to be on that. He never canceled his webinars. And I remember it took Linda and Linda's his wife, it took us probably a couple hours to get him dressed and get him ready for this thing. And my son was there. So Danny and I were walking on each side of him. He wanted to walk to his studio. It's in the backyard. And we held him and we walked him out to the studio. He sat in that chair. He was in an incredible amount of pain and really not doing well. When those cameras turned on, you would have never known that he was in pain. He was doing everything he could to deliver his message to who was on that webinar because he knew that what he was teaching had value. You want to talk about an inspiration. There's somebody, again, not letting outside circumstance dictate how he was going to be. He was the best version of himself in that very moment. When the cameras turned off, I mean,
Brilliant.
he
Yeah.
crashed, and we got him back in. He laid on the couch and probably slept for a couple hours. But you got the very best of him when he was on. And I challenge everybody watching this. When you're out with a client, you're doing business. Are you giving your clients, are you giving them the very best you've got? It doesn't matter what's going on around you. You give them the very best you got, you are going to get on in this world. You really are.
One of the things that he had taught me and among thousands of people around the world was having a gold card in your
hmm
pocket.
hmm
And how important is that? And what is the importance of this, Brian?
Well,
Like,
having a goal card with you. So for those of you that don't know, a goal card is simply this. It's just I don't have mine. They're in my pants in another room. So a goal
right,
card
you're not
is
wearing pants right now. That's the truth. Listen,
I
no.
do have pants on. A goal card is simply just a little like index card. And we had plastic sleeves made that they could go in that you would write your goal out. You'd write in the present tense, I am so happy and grateful now that I have, and you'd write your goal out and you'd put a date on it and you'd keep it in your pocket. And that way, every time you touched it, it was like a trigger that would make you think of your goal to keep you on target, keep you focused. That's where the exercise of writing out your goal every day, having it on a card that's in your pocket or in your purse, so that you touch it. You don't even need to read it. You touch it, and it's going to be like, oh God, yeah, I'm going after. It's just a trigger, really, is what it is, and that's the importance of it. It's to keep you focused on your target. I've got a vision board across from my desk right here. I used to have it in my bedroom. It was something that I had that I always looked at, every night before I went to bed, and every morning when I'd wake up, I'd see it. And something came to me the other day, probably a few months ago now. I put it on the wall right across my desk because I'm sitting at my desk so much right now. And this vision board it's another way of staying focused on your goal. I've got my predominant goal on it, and then I've got other small goals, other things I want to have or achieve. And I frame it really nicely in a proper frame so it looks like a piece of art. And I look at it every day and it keeps me focused. You need to do whatever it takes to keep you focused on your goal, on your target, on the why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you going out and being the best version of you? Why are you being such a great, whatever source for your clients? Because you've got a want, you've got a desire that's bigger than you. And if you can keep focused on that, use whatever triggers you, whatever is going to keep you on target. That's the trick with it. And that's why you had things like goal cards and all that. They're just triggers to keep you focused on what you're going after.
That's amazing. I know I have a gold card, and I look at it with complete trepidation and say, how the heck am I going to do this every single day?
Uh-huh. Yep.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you sharing some of these personal stories. And I think it's those personal stories that makes a bigger than life figure more
Mhm.
human to some of the people who are listening. Um, um, Before we wrap it up, Brian, because I want to be cognizant of your time, if you were to give someone a daily method of operation to help change their internal programming,
Mhm.
what daily method of operation should someone go about? Is it because Bob used to say, right, 100, your goals out 100 times a day and et cetera. Like, has there been something that you have found to be useful and successful for you?
So I'm going to probably throw something at you that you're not expecting. I
Okay.
think
Oh,
we've already talked about gold cards and
yeah.
and staying focused on it and everything else. I'm gonna share. Do I have a few minutes I can share a story?
Hey, listen, I'm here. I'm excited to have you here.
Okay. So I'm going to share a story that has dramatically impacted my life. I saw my father do this every day. It's something I've taught my kids and I see them do. And it's magic. If you want to be better at anything in business, if you want to attract more clients, you want to just be a better person, you want to have better friends, this is the secret. And this is something that Dad taught me when I was 9 years old. Um, and this is when we moved to Maplewood Lane in Glenview, Illinois. So I was 9. As you know, I was born in Toronto, so I started school in Toronto. We then moved to London, England. So I started another school in London, England. A year later, we moved back to a different area of Toronto. So I had to start another school in Toronto. Then, grade 4, 9 years old, we moved to Chicago. I'm starting another school. So you can imagine, by fourth grade, I'm in my fourth new school. I'm that perpetual new kid in school. And I hated it. Man, I can still take myself there and feel what that was like. I remember sitting with Dad in the house on Maplewood Lane and saying to him, Dad, I hate being that new kid at school. And he sat me down and he said this to me, and this has changed the course of my life, really. He said, Brian, this is what you need to do. Anybody that's standing in front of you, put these 4 letters across their forehead, MMFI. And what that stands for is make me feel important. He said, if you can make everybody that is standing in front of you feel important, feel seen, feel heard, you're going to make friends easily. You're going to get on in this world in a great way. And he liked to call it the impression of increase. And that is this: what can you do to make everybody that comes in contact with you today feel better because they were in contact with you? Think about that. So I started to do that. And boy, it just works like a charm. What can you do to make everybody feel better because they've been in contact with you? Most of us, we just want to be heard. We want to be seen. And how often you go to a party and you meet that one person that all they do is spill all the great stuff they're doing to you, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. They're not interested in you for nothing. All you want to do is get away from that person.
Sure.
But you go to the party and then you find somebody that's talking to you. They're interested in you. They're asking you interesting questions. And more importantly, they're listening. Boy, you just want to be with that person all night long, you
Yeah.
know? And that's the key. Somebody tells you a story that is something that maybe you've done, but they're telling you a story of something they've done and they're really excited about it. And if you've done it and you've maybe even done it better, bite your tongue. Don't say, "Oh yeah, I did that too." You know what that does? That diminishes their story. So what can you do to hold them up? What can you do to make somebody feel better because they came in contact with you? That was it. That's the impression of increase. I saw my father do it. I learned that at 9 years old, and I did it from that point forward. I will tell you, people want to do business with you if you act that way. They really do.
And
So
it's being a servant leader, right? It's
yeah, it
about
really
the other
is.
person in the transaction, and that's even with your friends, your family. I remember, I guess we're looking at 2019 when I first met you in Toronto at an event, and you spent about a half hour with me. It was a big event. There was lots and lots of people there, but you and I had a private conversation for about a half hour before everyone came into this massive room, and you left me feeling with that impression of increase. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Rich. You know what? It's an important way to live. Here's the deal with that. That's not any kind of business strategy. That's just a way of being. But boy, if you can be that way, you're going to have clients for life, and you're going to get referrals like crazy because people will want to deal with you.
That's amazing. You see some of the comments. I still have Bob Proctor's original books when I started in the real estate business over 35 years ago, and they're very inspirational to me. And then and now, it's so great to hear. Brian, is there number one? Thank you for giving of your time, because once you give it, you never get it back. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for sharing some of these stories and some of these ideas and principles with us, all of us today. Secondly, for those of you who are still in the webinar, I appreciate all of you being here. Where is the best way for the audience to, if they choose to, and if they want to find your book?
You know what? I guess I would just ask you, go to brianproctor.com.
Yeah.
If you go to brianproctor.com, you'll find a link that you can order the book in whatever country you're in. You can join the newsletter. I send out literally 2 emails a month. I won't inundate you with emails, and it's just content. It's valuable content that I feel can help you. So I would just go to brianproctor.com. If you don't want to do that, just go to Amazon. You can get the book on Amazon. My father knew the secret growing up with Bob Proctor. And I hope you will get the book. As I say, there's no money in a book. I'm not here to get rich off of you buying my book. I know in my heart that everything I have put in here, it's the best of who my father was. And it will help you live a better life. It'll show you how to achieve your goals, and it'll show you how to, honestly, how to even be a better person, just how to live in a daily way even better. So I hope you'll go out and grab the book and read it, and then write a review. Look at the reviews on Amazon. It's been heartwarming what's been happening. So,
Well, I
and
thoroughly
you can
enjoyed
always
the
reach
book.
out to me at the website. I'd be happy to respond.
That's amazing, and I must admit I did the audio version of it because I'm in the car a lot lately, and
Mhm.
it's been a companion for me for
Yeah.
and I've been through it twice. So I appreciate you taking the time to write it and sharing some of those stories. Um, Before we go, I just want to open it up to the audience for a few minutes. Are there any other questions that you'd love to, that's on your heart, that you'd love to ask Brian while we have him with us today? And if there isn't, that's okay. I just promised to give a few people an opportunity to. So, Brian, are you going to make it up to Toronto for the holidays, or are you going to be staying in the U.S.?
I am going to be staying in the U.S. this year. Yeah, as you probably heard, or you listened to the book. So we've built a beautiful place on the West Coast. We're right on Puget Sound, and so yeah, we're going to stay here for the holidays this year.
That's awesome.
But I will be back up in Toronto probably within a couple of months for sure.
Well, I look forward to having a glass of wine with you. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you for all the time that you gave us today. I appreciate you, and I wish you nothing but love and affection and happiness for the rest
Thank
of
you, Rich.
next year.
You know what? I appreciate this, and I appreciate you all for being here. I hope it's touched you in whatever way, and I look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Thank you so much, Brian.